welcome to the 2:30 Wednesday, August 20th, Public Works Committee meeting of the Tulsa City Council. I'm Lori Dector-Wright. I'm calling this meeting to order. Item number 8 is postponed. Item number 2, ordinance closing a certain portion of an alleyway located at 5551 South Peoria Avenue, requested by Jamie Skipper of Wallace Design Collective on behalf of Helona Development LLC, located between 5th Place and 6th to 6th Street and Peoria Avenue to Quaker Avenue, with the utilities having been relocated out of a portion of the alleyway, with the City of Tulsa retaining a utility easement over the south 93 feet of the alleyway during judicial vacation for future development. This is District 1. There's a public hearing on for tonight at 5. Counselor Hall Harper's not here, but Mr. Lichty is, so.
Good afternoon, Councilor Matt Lichty, Public Works. As you just said, there's an application to close an alley east of Peoria, north of 6th Street. This has been in the works for a very long time. There are multiple property owners that own this block, and so we have letter of support from the adjacent property owners. Ultimately, there will be a mutual access agreement that is entered into between all the property owners, and so that will be reviewed at judicial vacation to make sure that that has happened before we allow the alley to close. And as you said, we will need to retain an easement for the south 93 feet. In addition to that, you'll have a public meeting night because the alley has been open in the last 5 years. And so with all that to be said, this has been reviewed by various boards, authorities, and public utilities without objection, and we would recommend that you allow this closure.
Okay, any questions on this item? I'm assuming there was some sort of public engagement in the rural district on this?
We have engaged with the property owner only. We do
Okay.
have letter of support from the adjacent property owners.
Okay.
But I do not envision that you'll have anybody tonight against it. It is an alley that goes to these properties, and
Okay.
only those
I
properties.
think I know exactly what it is.
It's one block off Peoria
Uh-huh.
to the east.
Any questions on this one? Okay, thank you. Item number 3, thanks, Matt. Ordinance amending and correcting ordinance number 25607, approved by the Tulsa City Council on June 18th, 2025, and approved by the mayor on June 25th, 2025, which named Increment District A as Increment District number 23, City of Tulsa, which was incorrect. Oh my goodness. Replacing 23 with the correct number 24, correcting and clarifying the Increment District A is named Increment District number 24, City of Tulsa, correcting each reference to the name of said district in ordinance 25607 to state Increment District number 24, identifying each section of ordinance number 25607 affected, repealing those parts of ordinance number 25607 in conflict herewith. This does carry the emergency clause. Hi there.
Hi. Audrey Blank, Legal Department. The only thing that has changed with this ordinance is that the TIF district should have been named Increment District 24, and instead it was 23, but nothing else has changed.
No questions on that? All right. I feel like when we have this before us, we're like, so everything's good? Is it the same
It's been a
one?
long time.
Yeah, but I think Counselor Lakin even said like, so we're good. So I just have to laugh. It happens, Scrivener's error. All right. Item number 4 is
Thank
a
you.
resolution authorizing payment of $63,000 to Lax McCanth and Swamp Thanda plaintiffs and Cunningham and Mears PC attorneys at law from the sinking fund as a payment of a judgment and attorney fee award in case number CJ 2023-950. Lax McCanth and Swampa Thandra versus City of Tulsa et al. This carries the emergency clause, and I apologize for the name mispronunciations.
Y'all know my name.
Hi.
Chad Becker from Treasury, here as always to provide assurance that there's sufficient cash in the sinking fund to pay this judgment ahead of the levy placement on the property tax rolls. Judgment has been approved by the mayor and by the court. And with council's approval, finance will issue payment to the claimant and then forward all the necessary documents to the county to levy repayment to the sinking fund over a 3-year period. And we do have sufficient cash, $78.6 million in the sinking fund as of today. And Cameron Tacknell from Legal is here to discuss the case.
Hello, hello.
Hello, good afternoon. This was a motor vehicle accident that happened back on July 4th of 2021 near the gathering place. It involved a Tulsa police officer. The officer was on Riverside traveling northbound, and due to the 4th of July activities, the northbound lanes were barricaded off going northbound at 3100 South Riverside. And so the officer stopped, he saw that there were barricades on the southbound lanes too, and assumed that all southbound lanes were closed. So he attempted to maneuver a U-turn. But the far southbound lane was open to southbound traffic, and so he didn't see the plaintiff's vehicle moving southbound, and when he tried to maneuver the U-turn, he T-boned them right there at 3100 South Riverside. And this was the negotiated settlement, you know, to pay all the medical bills and pain and suffering and attorney fees. And
Any questions? No? Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Resolution relating, number 5, thanks. Resolution relating to the incurring, I am tripping over my words today. Resolution relating to the incurring of indebtedness by the trustees of the Tulsa Metropolitan Utility Authority for the purpose of funding the costs, construction, acquisition, and equipping capital improvements for the system by issuing the Tulsa Metropolitan Utility Authority Utility Revenue Bonds, Series 2025C, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $21,760,000, authorizing appropriate city officers to approve documents and take actions as may be necessary or required. Counselor Lakin gets to read that tonight, and this does carry the emergency clause.
Switching hats, this is a revenue bond issuance for TMUA. As referenced in the par amount of $21,760,000. We're structuring this over a 20-year term. It's for one single project at the Hickey Creek wastewater treatment plant. We're projecting rates in the neighborhood of 3.2 to 4.9. That's based upon Bloomberg rates from back at the end of June, plus 50 basis points. Based upon what the Fed is saying, we will hopefully come in way underneath that, but that's where we're projecting right now, and a projected true interest cost around 4.4%. This has already been before TMUA at their meeting last week, and they approved the issuance. We're here today and this evening asking the same from council. And we're planning the sale for September 9th. We'll be back at TMUA the following day on the 10th to present the results of the sale to them and ask for their approval of the lowest and best bidder. And we will close this issuance on September 18th. So we will ask so kindly if council will approve this resolution to authorize the sale this evening at the 5 o'clock meeting.
Any questions for Mr. Becker?
So nicely.
Okay.
That was cute.
All right, I think there's no questions or comments. So without objection, I'd like to move number 7 ahead of number 6, so Mr. Lifty can be more efficient with his time this afternoon. Yeah. Item number 7, license agreement between the City of Tulsa and the City Lights Foundation of Oklahoma for property located at 1410 East 46th Street North and 1506 East 46th Street North, City Lights Edition, for installation of light poles within the street right-of-way in District 1. This is for their new village.
Yes, so the City Lights Foundation is putting in a development there north of 46th Street North, along what will become North Rockford once they construct it. They have asked to put 5 LED lights along the right-of-way there as an entrance into their complex, and so they've applied for a license agreement, and this has been reviewed by authorities, boards, and commissions and private utilities with no objections. So we would recommend you approve this license agreement.
Lights for city lights, makes sense to me. Any questions or comments on their request? All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Lifty.
Thank you for moving forward.
Yes, of course. Item number 6, ordinance amending Tulsa Revised Ordinances, Title 37, titled Tulsa Revised Traffic Code, Chapter 11, titled Pedestrians' Rights and Duties, rename Section 1105, sitting, lying upon or standing in or adjacent to a roadway, establishing minimum horizontal clearance, establishing safety measures, amending Title 37, Chapter 2, titled Traffic Administration, Section 203, titled Forms, Warrants, Bonds, and Penalties, to reflect the amended title of Section 1105. This does carry the emergency clause. It's brought to us by Councilors Dutton, Gilbert, Lakin, and Bush, and it is on for first reading tonight. So this is a working group that's bringing this forward. Yes, Councilor Dutton?
So we're open to comments.
Well, I think they're doing the presentation.
I think we have a
Yeah.
presentation.
Sorry. Do you want to do the presentation, or you have to say something before that?
No, go ahead.
Okay, we'll do the presentation first. Who's, okay, who's presenting?
Me.
Okay.
So I'll give the presentation. I know that there have been plenty of discussions since this was in the backup material, and it's been covered by the media and other things. So I'll go through this high-level presentation, and I would ask Sarah and/or Jack to jump in whenever it's necessary to correct something that I've said or to add color where I've missed some element of the presentation. As you all probably know, because you probably received some of the same concerns as I have, one of the top concerns that I have from my citizens is just the safety of those who are generally standing in our medians. And I haven't quantified it. I can't tell you how many emails I've received. I've received dozens, if not hundreds of messages since I posted on social media and since the media has covered this particular ordinance amendment draft of people supporting doing something to protect the safety of those who are in the medians. Generally, what we're trying to do is just enough to protect the safety of our residents while preserving the free speech rights of our citizens. That's the summary of this slide. The unfortunate reality of having people out on the medians is summarized in this picture, which was taken, I think, by TPD, or, one of TPD's personnel at 71st and Yale. My office overlooks this area, and this is the car that slid across that median. Unfortunately, 2 individuals were distributing pamphlets about a drug abuse prevention program, I understand, out of an Oklahoma City-based church. One lost his life, and the other one was critically injured. There's a couple of things that are a couple of major ideas or two primary components of the ordinance. One is the horizontal clearance element, and then, as you know, just the median regulations in general. So the draft ordinance would just regulate distances on sidewalks, 18 inches on sidewalks, and then 18 inches within either side of the median. So a person would have to have 18 inches on either side of his or her body between them and the roadway. In this picture, I don't know if everybody knows this. I don't know if I knew this until I dived really deeply into this, but the brick, the stamped concrete in this is not only decorative, it also helps those who have vision impairments and other things to keep a safe distance away from our roadway. So I went out, I jumped out of my car. I don't know where this picture was taken, but I found stamped concrete similar to that, and generally it's 18 to 24 inches away from, including the curb from the roadway. The curb itself tends to be 8 inches. We just talked to Terry Ball about that just not too long ago, actually about an hour ago. So there are 3 different scenarios basically, or 3 types of medians. Those that I'll go through, there's 3 different slides here. 36-inch median, one that's under 10 feet, and one that's more than 10 feet. Again, we're not trying to completely limit the use or prevent any particular activity. We're just basing all of these recommendations on federal standards to protect the public safety interests of our residents. And as you'll see through this, really as median widths increase, safety measures decrease, or you can say it the other way if you want to as well. So narrow medians are tightest. There's really, unless you're a razor-thin person, literally a razor-thin person, there's no way for anybody to stand on a 36-inch median, because that person wearing a reflective vest or no vest at all would have to have 18 inches on either side of their body between themselves and the roadway. So moving up into the under 10-foot category, If you have a reflective vest, just all the way on the left, if you have a reflective vest or no reflective vest and you're standing in that 18-inch area right up against the road, then that would be a violation of this ordinance. If you're outside of the 18 inches, you're in that safe zone or clear zone, if you will, and you don't have the reflective vest, then you're still in violation of the ordinance because you don't have the vest on. So anything under 10 feet on roads that are greater than 25 miles an hour still go back to those same provisions that we've had in place since, I think, August 3rd of 22 or thereabouts. If you do have the reflective vest and you're out there between 30 minutes before sunset and sunrise and 30 minutes after sunset, you have the reflective vest on and you're in that clear zone, then you're good to go. And then on medians that are beyond 10 feet, and 10 feet wasn't just a random selection, it was something that was defined in various federal regulations. So it's not like we decided that 10 feet was the magical number, but it's really relating to those federal standards that are out there that say 10 feet is good for cars going 35 miles an hour or over. Is that correct? So in this case, still, if you're within, you don't have to wear a reflective vest on anything over 10 feet. And I don't even know, Jack or Sarah, if you have to be soliciting or standing or doing anything else between those set hours of the day, correct? Does that still apply, the set hours of the day?
No, those were regulations, don't tell them.
Okay, that's what I thought. So you can be out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if you want to be on something that's over 10 feet, so long as you're not within 18 inches of the roadway. No reflective vest, no anything else required. Last but not least, and then we'll just open it up for questions and dialogue, is the penalties that are part of this amended ordinance are no different than the penalties have been since, I think, Councilor Gilbert ran this ordinance back in 2017. It was amended in August of 2022, and the penalties were not changed. So they are and have been $150. So if right now an officer were to choose to write a person a ticket for not wearing a reflective vest or being out there 45 minutes before the sun rises, they could write a ticket for $150. So we did not change that element whatsoever. And as I've told many of you all, it's not our goal, and I don't think the police department's goal, and Chief Olmerhauser can come talk to us if he would like, and he's welcome at the table at any time. But I'm told, and I met with the chief of police last week, that it's their goal to simply, just like the curfew, move people along. Use this revised law to remind people, this is the law, you're not allowed to be, let's say, on this median distributing pamphlets for a drug abuse program. You need to get off the median because it's unsafe. And so that's the first line of defense, and I would expect it to go similar to the way that some of the enforcement is going right now. There haven't been a host of citations written for people not wearing reflective vests or anything else. When a citation would be written, this is a $150 war book to court charge. So if, with the minimums and maximums shown on the slide, so if somebody's not able to pay the $150, then the court has the ability to modify that and also to divert them into different programs that we have been very focused in on building through our court system, including, and they can go through a Rule 8 hearing too, so that they can really assess what the person's ability to pay is. I just teed you up right there so that you can, you can tell us more about just the enforcement aspects of this current ordinance and what you would see going forward as well.
Absolutely. So I think I can probably pivot back to our conversation over curfew. If the goal is just as many citations as possible, we failed and we're not doing our job correctly. I think it always starts with public education, a lot of compassion to what's going on, and and then waiting for people to respond to that legal direction. And then also whether or not it's a repetitive issue, and if we can solve it from a different way, or if enforcement actually does need to take place, so.
Okay. One thing that I've been asked, why the 18 inches? Where's the 18 inches come from? And it does come from a federal standard, which I may have already said, but the standard, even as applied within the city of Tulsa, doesn't allow for benches or landscaping or a wide variety of other things to be located within that 18 inches. And so if we can't put those kinds of things in that space, then we certainly don't want a person standing or sitting in that space either. Public Works has started to take the tack that, you know, those signs that have to break away, that really do call out the fact that there's a median right there. Sometimes it's hard to see them whenever people are driving, but those signs have been broken off so many times that they're just removing the sign and the foundation of the sign altogether and just painting the curbs. And I don't have an inventory of how many signs have been broken off, but anecdotally, it's hundreds in my district. You know, I've probably called in 50 in my time, and if that were a person, then that person could be dead, could be critically injured, could be injured, period. I've personally driven past hundreds of people that I'm concerned about their well-being. Their leg is out in the road, they barely fit on the median, they have an animal or something like that, and that's another important element to this ordinance, is that animals are not permitted to be out there standing, sitting, or doing anything else. And then most recently, you know, in late July, I saw a group of ladies out trying to direct people into a parking lot for a car wash. And I think that's where I became hyper-focused on this, because I couldn't see around them. I was heavily distracted trying to just merge into another lane of traffic, and I was severely worried for their welfare, given that they were doing all that half a mile from where two young ladies had lost their lives just a few months before in a car accident. So I bring this, I know everybody has their opinions about this, and that we all need to provide some input. So before I turn it over and open it up to the floor, Councilor Bush, Councilor Gilbert, Councilor Dutton, Jack, Sarah, what other elements need to be added here? Councilor Bush, anything?
Yeah, no, first of all, working on this was an experience this summer I had where the high school kids were actually literally running out into traffic to get money for their car wash. 97th and that odd intersection before you cross the bridge over to Jinx, and I remember.
Exactly where I was.
I was like, oh, good grief, where drivers are not paying attention, as we know, speeding, running red lights, see it every day. I thought one of these high school kids could get, so we have to do something, and that's why I wanted to sign on and figure this out. I think the enforcement piece, my comments have been the enforcement piece. So are we all walking around with a ruler now? I'm like, okay, we still have some common sense here, people. Surely you can judge 18 inches, so, you know, it's my only comment.
Could I ask a clarifying question about what you just mentioned? In the current policy, you're not supposed to run out into traffic outside of a pedestrian area anyway, right? This is not against,
Yeah,
like,
I
I
know.
agree with the
I
median
know.
part, but I'm just checking, that's already not something you're supposed to do in our current street I'm just checking, like.
It's probably like leaving the curb.
Right.
There's.
Right, soliciting in the roadway,
I'm just want to make sure I know
jaywalking,
what's already
there's a
codified.
multitude of things that piece can be given. But car crashes are completely indiscriminate
Oh, of course, yeah.
and,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I was just checking,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just checking for before and after.
Anything?
But we've all seen the
I
kids
think
with
Oh,
the
of
car
course,
wash. Yeah.
You hit everything that need to be hit. I'm sorry to use that word. But, I mean, in my district, what I've seen is actually people walking through traffic off of medians and curbs, trying to get money, of course. There's like, but these are adults, not, I too have the car washes and everything, but it's just scary. because you don't know how drivers are going to react. You don't know what speed individual cars are going to be coming into intersections, and you don't know what's going on in the car. That might be a distraction. Well, you might have kids in the back seat saying, if you cry out one more time, I'm pulling this car over and I'm letting you out. So, I never said that to mine, but,
But you have.
anyhow, so I was, and plus all the work that I did previously, trying to keep people safe on the sidewalks and medians. That's why I wanted to help out with this and jump on it.
Yeah, and I think it's also the reverse safety aspect. And so why this protects pedestrian safety, it also does protect driver safety. Because if you're driving up to an intersection and you've got a whole lot of people standing right on the edge of everything, and you're trying to make sure that you're not, one, distracted, but two, that you're not trying to hit them on accident because all of a sudden they step out and you run over them. So I'm actually gonna start to float away from the center median towards the other lane where I feel a little safer from not hitting them, and now so it doesn't just provide a pedestrian safety aspect, it also does provide that driver safety aspect.
Exactly, because oops, I forgot to look at my blind spot to see
Yeah.
who's coming to the side, on the side of me.
On that point, and before I turn it over to you just for comment.
Well, I actually
you could-
still wanted to say something in regards to being on the,
Oh, no, I know, I just was, going around the room, but on this point real quick. The 18 inches on the sidewalk, and you and I talked about this a little bit too, and I was reminded after I left our conversation about this one point that a good friend made. If you're going down Lewis or Peoria, a narrow street in the grand scheme of
With narrow
things.
sidewalks.
So if I'm in my truck, I've got to use just about the entire lane. And that means my mirror is over some of the curb and some of the sidewalk as well. So I don't want to walk along a sidewalk that's right up against the curb. In my district, I've been begging Public Works to move the sidewalks a foot, 2 feet, give us some green space in between the curb and the sidewalk, so we don't have those problems. You have some problems in your district because it's just, the rights of way aren't as wide. But I think that's why the 18 inches comes in as well. For standing and sitting, this doesn't deal with walking, so someone can still walk in that area if they want to, but my advice would be, don't walk in that area because somebody like me is probably gonna be coming down that roadway, and they may have a big mirror, or there may be a big truck or something like that, and
I'm glad you ended there. I thought you were about to be like a negligent driver like me. I'm glad it was the
No,
memory of
no.
a big truck.
Yes.
Sorry.
Counselor
Yeah.
Dutton.
I just also wanted to state that I co-sponsored this without being in discussions with everybody and wasn't aware of all of the research that had gone into it. I was not brought into the conversation, and that being said, I just found out about it Friday, and I went ahead and accepted co-sponsorship of it without actually reading it. So that was a rookie mistake on my part. I never should have accepted a co-sponsorship without having all the information and even being in the talk. So I just wanted to put that out there for clarity purposes going forward.
You don't have to continue to be a co-sponsor.
Right, I'm gonna pull my
Okay.
name. Because I wasn't aware of any of the research and discussions, and I think it's important that questions I have are brought to the table before following through on
Okay.
something as important
Yeah,
as a
I-
sponsorship.
I did my best to take the conversations that you and I had. I remember two
Well, we just
particular
talked about,
conversations.
yeah, we talked about safety, that was my big thing, was public safety.
Yeah.
I was unaware of the fine aspect, and so.
And we didn't change that.
Well, I
So-
understand that, but I wasn't aware there was even a fine associated with it. And so I think we can all agree that safety is all of our concern.
Yeah.
And it's important that we protect our community, citizens in the process, but my concern really was the fine
Okay.
and basically criminalizing people that are already poverty-stricken. And I'm concerned about clogging up the courts. I'm concerned about TPD having to do the paperwork for it. I mean, they're already strapped, from my understanding. I know that safety is paramount, and I've seen what you're talking about coming onto exit and entrance ramps from 244. That's so concerning, because people are driving,
Yeah,
and they are distracted by their phones.
yeah.
But you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip, and I just don't think that we can criminalize our way out of poverty. And so.
Yeah, and that's not my intention, and I'm not focused on any, I
Well-
don't know who's sitting out in the
Right.
medians whatsoever. And I've talked, and you all can talk too, to TPD pretty extensively, but you can.
Oh, yeah, okay, well, I'm just.
I don't think we're gonna end up in that same place, but.
Right, I understand what you're saying, but just the fact that the fine is already articulated and on paper. And
Well-
I'm thinking of other options, and that's what I wanted to talk about, were solutions outside of fines, like possibly beefing up our Better Way program, where people can earn money that day and participate in the community, or community volunteer opportunities. Meals on Wheels always needs community volunteers, whether to pack lunches or whatever. There's so many community volunteer opportunities, and I would like to actually see something like that. Rescues.
So can I just get clarification? Typically, not always, but when we have like 4 counselors
Oh, yeah,
listed,
it's on there.
there's an actual like working group or people that came together, so did that not happen?
Me.
Like, how did this
Yeah.
happen? I know you and I had a conversation when
Right.
that tragedy happened right in front of your office. And
Yep.
then that was like last September,
Yep.
and then we see this, so,
We don't-
I
we
know
don't
I
always
didn't work
have-
on it, but,
Well, we don't always have working groups.
so were
I
you all
mean-
working independently and then decide?
I asked to lead the charge on this when I was told Phil had already started. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just sign on.
Yeah, and then
There
she
was no
had-
working group.
So
then she had
everyone just
run-
signed on, but we all saw the ordinance on Friday except for Phil?
I don't know when they saw the ordinance.
That's
We-
what I'm asking, right?
Yeah,
So
but
she
we
didn't
talked-
see it till
Well, and-
Friday.
Yeah, but we talked about all of these concepts, and the 18 inches and, yeah, all those elements were part of the discussion that we had.
We did talk about that.
Uh-huh.
The fine aspect of it is what I was
Yeah, and
completely
I-
unaware of, and which the public has been.
But I understand that you're
not
like, that's
made
already
aware.
pre-existing in the
Yeah,
ordinance,
I
I
didn't-
see.
So there
Right, I
wasn't like
didn't mean
a
to
working
get
group
out
that
of the
met and
discussion.
like
No.
went through and
Yeah.
had data that they looked at and stuff. It
No.
was like, you wanted to do a thing, you wanted to do a thing, you had already done a thing.
Oh, so this is a
What?
process question?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's what I'm just trying to
Okay.
find out.
Yeah,
okay.
So
Yeah,
people
there
were
was
on
just-
like parallel tracks and it just merged with city
Just
legal.
merged.
Yeah,
yeah.
But also, when I was out campaigning, I mean, I heard a lot
of course.
about pedestrian safety and people worried about people standing on medians.
Oh, I think she's just asking more of how the policy
Oh,
was
no.
formed,
Right, and
not
so
who
that's
cares about it.
why, I mean, I wanted to get involved on it, is because I know that it weighs heavily on people's,
Oh, I'm not questioning like the
Mine,
public
just like-
safety aspect. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone here
No,
is.
no.
I'm just the procedure, the
Yeah, it
process.
could have been just something that I put together, and then I said, hey.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's
you just had
legal.
people sign on. It wasn't like,
There
let's
was
sit
no
down and,
It wasn't a working group.
okay, that's the question.
Is it my turn? I have questions.
It is your turn, and then we can make a cue.
You make it like an antsy kid with my hand up. No. Okay, hold on. Let me pull up my question list. I think I had this might be a question for legal related to the drafting. So I know that there is like I do want to say up front, I agree medians, like, I think the thing I'm hearing is that we all agree that cars are really unsafe and that our infrastructure is not pedestrian friendly by and large, right? And I understand that that's not something, like, I'd love to wave a wand and all of our public infrastructure is something that's safe for pedestrians everywhere. So I acknowledge that that's not this reality we can make come to fruition, and therefore really do understand the median part of the policy. While I do have the criminalization kind of perpetuation of poverty concerns, I understand, like, I agree, I don't think people should be hanging out on these narrow medians in the middle of the road. Like, I don't think anyone does that for fun anyway, but like, if we can help keep people safe, great. My concern about the policy is the really broad sidewalk element, because, well, I'll get into that, but I wanna clarify something first related to the 18-inch criteria, and I know this may have been like copying a policy from elsewhere or other standards, because I know that comes from the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, and is really, like, the concept of clear zones is really about a highway design process. And I know that there's simultaneously the National Association of City Transportation Officials, which focuses more on urban transportation and city streets. I'm just gonna read a little clip from that organization about clear zones that kind of, like, this was me really looking at the sidewalk element and looking for unintended consequences. You guys have a knowing look. Do you want to tell me before I read this?
No, read it, yeah.
Okay, this says, the concept of clear zones is sometimes cited in highway design process. A clear zone represents an unobstructed traversable area beyond the traveled way, often paved or planted shoulder, or a short setback on the sidewalk. Clear zones provide a runoff zone for errant vehicles that have deviated from the main roadway, are intended to decrease the frequency and severity of fixed object roadside crashes, forgiving driver error. While clear zones are applicable as a safety parameter for the interstate and freeway system, in urban settings, clear zones are not applicable or feasible due to the right-of-way limitations and potential safety hazards. To the greatest extent possible, the lateral distance between the traveled way and the sidewalk or parking lane should be minimized, providing ample space for sidewalks and other amenities. Removal of roadside impediments, trees, street furniture, etc., has an ambiguous safety record in urban environments and is at odds with city policies striving to increase pedestrian traffic and spur economic activity. Street trees and other roadside features are superior to wide shoulders or runoff zones, as they can decrease overall speeds and encourage a more pedestrian-friendly environment. So my takeaway from this, especially a lot of areas of our city have pretty narrow sidewalks. They're older, relatively. That's definitely true for a lot of my district. And we're not about to replace them anytime soon with the pavers, with the grass strips. Of course, we have areas with no sidewalks. We have, just some really, or just areas with crumbling infrastructure. I've done sidewalk audits along Charles Page, where you have crumbling sidewalks, city utility pole things in the sidewalks. There is some narrow clearance. I understand that we're talking about for people walking, which I have a physics question about that in a minute. But like when it comes to the 18 inches, and like this really coming from a highway recommendation, I just am curious about how you all determined that.
I can answer that if you want, do you want to partially answer it?
So, three things.
Yeah.
One, there's a distinction between the clear zone, which is
Right.
the 10 feet that we're
Right.
talking about, and the horizontal clearance, which is the 18 inches. And so the 18-inch horizontal clearance applies everywhere. It applies to sidewalks, to medians. The 10-foot clear zone only applies to medians. And you're right, the origin of this comes from design guidelines.
For the
And
interstate.
Right. And what that guidance tells us is that this clear zone provides an opportunity for an automobile to correct within that zone. So we're not saying in the ordinance that we have to design to that standard in an urban area. So we don't have to design extra wide
Right.
medians or extra wide roadways. But where roads are already designed, we take from that guidance that it's not necessarily safe for someone or objects to be within that clear zone, just inherently.
Right.
So it's for different purposes. We're not designing roads by this ordinance. We're trying to keep people out of these clear zones where it is acknowledged that it's where cars may not have an opportunity to correct if they're.
So.
I want to know the physics question.
Okay, my physics question. I was thinking about this because I can't decide if these are even physics related. There's an episode of like Mythbusters where they're talking about if you're running versus walking in the rain, which way are you going to get wetter? And they said it was actually running, like you're going to gather more raindrops. Anyway, so I was thinking about that and thinking about this. If you are standing for 10 minutes within 18 inches, on a sidewalk, on a city sidewalk, versus walking for 10 minutes within those 18 inches on the city sidewalk, are you any more or less likely to be hit by a car if you're
Oh,
stationary
that's a
versus
stat
moving?
question. I think that's a statistics question.
Which, like, I think the answer is like, actually, I don't know, like,
And the goal is to get through an area, not
I'm just,
necessarily.
I'm just verbal, like, I think, because that brings into like, so our sidewalks, we're saying, our sidewalks, the intention of them is strictly you're walking and moving on them, they're not for any other purpose.
No, certainly not.
Okay,
But in most areas around the city, the right-of-way is at least 12 feet behind the curb line. So even if it's not entirely a sidewalk, or even a sidewalk in good condition, you would have an opportunity to stand back 18
Okay.
inches, regardless of whether you're on a sidewalk or it's, and so, but in those areas, like you say, where you can't do that, then the goal would be to move through there to an area where you can.
and this is saying it has to be, you're like physically traversing, like you can't stand still and like do the Macarena and that movement counts.
I don't know if the Macarena counts.
I'm just checking.
But you can, I
Yeah.
mean, you can just
Yeah.
walk back and forth. You're not standing or sitting.
But how does that, so
And
how
then-
is that safer? But this is my safety question.
If you're trying,
But that's what I'm just saying, so if you were walking within that 18, because we're saying it's okay to walk in that 18 inches, but it's not okay to stand in that
We-
18 inches.
I'm not saying that. I don't think
Well-
it's
But that's
safe.
what the policy
And you're only there
seems to be
for a short
asserting.
time.
Well, but if you're
Doesn't
walking
say
for,
it's safe.
if you're walking for 2 blocks along a 35-mile-per-hour road for like, you know, however many minutes, and someone else simultaneously is standing in one spot for the same amount of minutes, is one of those people safer than the other from cars?
Well, for the same amount of minutes, probably not, but the goal, again, is to,
Just discourage.
well, to move people through to a safe area, to a sidewalk that does have that
Okay.
ability to.
This is so fun. This is the
We-
most we've ever had a conversation, Jack. No, I'm just kidding.
About
it's not.
stats and physics.
No,
Um,
okay, I do have.
Just, can I
Yes,
say
of
one thing
course.
on that?
Yeah.
So Counselor Bingle and I went to that congressional lunch today, and we came back and we were just looking at the area out in front of City Hall. And as I said earlier, you know, the curb itself is 8 inches
Well, we
wide.
have really big curb clearance right in this area with more than a
Well,
lot
it's
of other
not
sidewalks.
8 inches tall, it's 8 inches
No,
wide.
no, I know, but we have like, our
But I don't-
corners and curbs are a lot bigger than other areas of the city.
Well, he said it was typically 8 inches, so you may
The
have.
curb, yeah.
Yeah, the curb itself.
Right.
And I know we all played this game whenever we were kids, maybe we still play it, where you try to walk on the curb and see
Mm-hmm.
how far you can make it and stuff like that. Usually that's in your neighborhood. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it didn't seem like neither of us agreed that we would even walk in that 18 inches on a busy road on something that was over 25 miles an hour, because it's just too close to the roadway
Mm-hmm.
itself, that generally people are making the determination, or their parasympathetic nervous system is making it for them to say, look, you gotta move over here versus where you are right now, because it's just not safe for you to be right here.
Well, that would only be a stress response, but I see what you're saying, related to a parasympathetic nervous
Yeah,
system.
see, now we're in health,
cortisol-
and now you know more about
Cortisol
me.
response, no,
Well, it could
okay,
be.
so my,
A mirror, it's getting ready to hit me.
I know, well, but granted though, I think this still allows, people to car door a pedestrian, but, so, okay, here's a question, and this is like an unintended consequence question that I thought a lot about, and have a map that I'm gonna ask us to pull, actually, yeah, could we pull up, I sent a link.
I need the keyboard.
I can give you I made a tiny URL for this one if we need it.
I pulled it up on there.
thank you.
I have to
She just
escape.
used control.
I just felt like I
need
needed
the
to
wanna
escape,
type, like,
button.
because we didn't have a tiny URL this morning, I was like, I need to. So, no, so this is, so this is my this is a question of curiosity, because I think with this, by applying this to sidewalks where the speed limit is over 25 miles per hour, I wanted to go, I was like, hey, what sidewalks does this apply to? So I got a map from Incog,
Well,
they were really psyched to make maps.
I did have it pulled up.
Oh, I can tell you the
before
URL. It
Committee.
is,
I just don't know.
it is tinyurl.com/
Here,
Yeah, you can
I'm not
type it
gonna
in.
be able to see that part.
yeah, slash,
Yeah, you type it in.
Tulsa, oh, okay, me,
I did have it.
okay, wait, where am I typing?
You can't swipe on there.
Right, go to
I
the
can't-
browser, go to the browser.
Oh, I was like, I don't have enough.
I'll try to swipe on there, Laura.
I'm gonna accidentally open who knows what on here. I'm gonna end up watching whatever movie. Okay.
That would be really funny if something happened.
Oh my god, it's looking a lot of pressure now. What if I go to the wrong tiny URL?
You're gonna have to sign in as a guest at the,
Oh, is it not gonna let me?
I'm just joking.
No, you can.
Oh,
You're fine.
okay, close to 25 miles per hour. All right, I am not pulling up anything that is questionable.
Ryan Walters.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm glad you said it, I was thinking it.
We were all thinking it.
I saw your thought bubble.
I know.
Okay, so I was curious what roads this applied to, we can always zoom in. And one of the things that really struck me is you do have some chunk of some business districts that are 30 miles per hour over. Like I thought about on 3rd Street where you have Country Bird Bakery and people line up for like 2 hours at a time on that sidewalk. Granted, that road already has kind of a road diet, it has a bike lane, it has a middle turn lane, it has a lot of pedestrian safety features already.
Where is this again?
3rd Street.
Okay.
3rd Street between Peoria and Utica. And then I thought about the Meadow Gold District and like kind of Mother Road Market area where it's like, your 30 miles per hour areas. And here's a hypothetical question with that, and then I'll get into what I think are unintended consequences for 25 mile per hour business districts. But okay, if I'm parking to go inside Wildflower Cafe on 11th Street, I could parallel park, I'm inside the restaurant, blah, 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 I come out and I'm standing in that 18-inch area wrestling with my toddler for 20 minutes to get her in the car. Am I there for too long? I'm just curious.
I mean-
That's, I
First-
know,
first
I
of all,
know
you
that's
have
not
to
the
be-
intent, I know that's not the intention, but this is my question.
You're not standing or
Yeah.
sitting.
Yeah,
No, I'm
you're actually-
standing, trying to wrestle my kid into the car
You're
from the
wrestling.
curb.
I mean,
I'm
You're-
wrestling, but I'm,
Yeah,
but my
you're
fear is-
physically trying to,
I think you could create any
one of the,
scenario.
I'll let one of
I'm
the
just-
be in
attorneys
violation.
define.
It's a real, this is a real, I'm just doing like a hypothetical, like who does this apply to and who does this not apply to question.
Well, I don't think, it depends which side of the car you're on. If you're over
Oh,
on.
I'm on the sidewalk. like
Yeah,
18
but if you're over
inches.
on the driver's side, like, I don't think anybody today is getting cited for jaywalking, for getting their toddler
Right.
in the car, same
Again, it's not that I
same
think that the
principle
police are about to come
would
cite me for
apply.
this.
And I think it's, as long as it's reasonably necessary to do that, if your toddler is taking 20 minutes to get in the car, which is logical,
It does happen.
that's as long as it's reasonably necessary.
And that's considered
do
part of
that.
like the traversing.
Yeah, I mean, that would obviously never be prosecuted as,
Well, no.
Maybe the police can help you get the toddler in the car.
If the police don't help
Maybe
whatever.
you could, maybe you could cuff the toddler.
One of the police.
That'll
It
be
is.
awesome, yes.
If I could call police for help with that, I would. No,
We've been called for less.
Yeah, I know you.
I'm sure you have.
Go to school.
No, so here's my question though, because I think a lot of what this does as it applies to sidewalks in areas over 25 miles per hour has to do with like, right, it definitely prevents a certain amount of panhandling, right? That's like what's happening on the medians, that's what's happening on sidewalks, and especially in higher volume, faster traffic areas, and that's a safety concern. This makes it then where the areas where you can be within those 18 inches are 25 miles per hour under. That's business districts, that's downtown Cherry Street, Brookside, that's school zones, that's neighborhoods. And so to me, I'm wondering if we're saying, okay, you can't be in this clearance space right here, then someone's moving a block up and they're, at Brookside by day, or they're, like outside of TCC, or, I'm just thinking of like, is this ending up, if the goal is to try to reduce the visibility of panhandling, which is part of my
That's not
impression of
my
this
goal.
policy, I understand,
That
I know there's
doesn't
other safety
sound like
concerns,
this.
but I think that's like, I think that's a lot of the perception of what the policy is doing. I'm not saying that's your personal goal, but it is something it does, it's a byproduct of this. But I'm wondering if it then concentrates that panhandling in some of these business districts.
Can I piggyback off what you just said?
Yeah.
So right there at 21st and 129th East Avenue, we have some very narrow medians right there
Yep.
on that intersection on both the north and south side.
Yeah.
We now have people standing in those medians that weren't there previously. Let me tell you, the way people drive today aggressively
It's scary.
and are driving through lights and making turns and,
But I don't disagree with the median, for
these
those, there is
people
the
that
sidewalks.
are jaywalking across the street and playing Frogger with their life, it is just challenging to me as a human being that you would even take that risk to stand on that corner the way people drive.
But those are traffic violations, those are already
totally get that, but the
Violations,
width of these
talking on your phone is a
medians
violation.
Well, that's why I'm not,
These
that's why the medium
medians
part makes sense
are
to me. It's the
so
sidewalks
narrow.
that I'm.
it's just
No, I
insane.
Hold on
understand
a
it's a safety
second.
concern.
Hold on, are you done
I think my,
for now?
I think the
She
one
was
other
kind of
follow-up,
asking a question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I think my,
well, just everyone.
I'm just asking
Yeah.
about this as
I
an
agree.
unintended consequence or what that might look like. And then my other thought is, because the other thing I've been asked about, separate from that kind of like panhandling side of it, is the public protest side, right? We do have places where people are, right, we see a lot of, kind of that civic engagement. People are up on the street. I'm thinking of people who are at 11th and Yale every weekend, or that one person with the like
41st
very
and
large
Yale.
flag at 71st. I know there are people doing that, and this pushes them back a certain amount. And this is maybe a question for legal. So in sidewalk areas where there's not enough clearance and maybe there's like damage, there's a pole, there's this or that, they just, if there's only 18 inches to stand, they just can't protest on the sidewalk there at all?
Well, they can move down to an area where
Where they-
the right-of-way is sufficient to, and, I mean,
It just feels like we're saying you can't use a part of a public sidewalk is what I'm struggling with.
well, I mean, the overriding consideration is, even in public forums, you can establish time, place, and manner.
Of course, for
Reasonable time,
panhandling,
place, and manner
yes.
restrictions, so this would be a time, place, and manner restrictions. You're certainly allowed to protest on sidewalks, except for those few areas where it happens to be so narrow that you can't leave 18 inches clearance.
Okay.
I
It
think,
was just a curiosity.
Well, and I'm just doing the math, you said standard curb width is 8 inches, so if you basically double that, that's the little
Yeah,
Yeah,
horizontal zone of don't be in it.
yeah.
yeah, and Terry said earlier today that not every sidewalk, of course, is 5 feet, but most of our
A lot of them are, yeah.
sidewalks are 5 feet. And then you said something earlier, and I really hadn't thought about this until right now, but, as you, in the situation that I explained, and you did too, at 96th and Riverside, I was so distracted because I couldn't see around the people who were in that area. And so I was just thinking about 41st and Yale. I've gotta see around the corner just to know what else is there. And if I have a little bit of a gap, it's going to help me. And, we're not, yeah, so,
Well, and that's why I don't disagree with the median element, knowing.
no,
that
that's,
would-
I'm talking about
Yeah,
the
with the
sidewalk
sidewalk.
element. So if I'm coming around a corner, if I'm
Yeah.
going from Yale to 41st, let's say eastbound, then having that additional width, for me as
Yeah,
a
that's
driver,
also
even to
correct.
see what I'm getting ready to go in would be
Yeah.
helpful for me.
I think my curiosity is knowing that the cars are so much more dangerous than the people, and we're regulating the people side of this, not the cars, which I do get, like, that it could be, really hard to regulate driver behavior, but part of me is, was there consideration about just different speed abatement things, like lowering speed limits in some of these key if there's heavy pedestrian areas where we're really worried for people's
There's
safety?
there's just so many though,
But look at Brookside, I'm sorry.
I mean,
We've
it's
done
illustrated.
everything
Oh,
to
I
slow
know.
down traffic, and it's still 45 miles an hour. We got flashing yellow lights.
Oh, I
We
know,
got the
and
brick
this
crossings, and cars are like, yeah, that's a nice
Well,
suggestion.
But then that's people who are actually in the road who've been hit on, because that's my
Yes.
other thought is, when you look at the
Yes.
statistics, most pedestrian accidents happen at intersections, it's not, I think the thing I've seen get hit most off the sidewalk is where Palace Cafe was, but like not people, I've seen more buildings be hit than, like humans, you tend to get hit in intersections and crossing than they are when they're actually on the sidewalk, so I just wasn't sure about the statistics of applying
But
this
the
to the
pal-
sidewalk.
Except for the Palace Cafe, I mean, it's off the sidewalk and where they got hit so many times.
So many times, I don't know how people do that.
It's all
You know
people
what?
driving recklessly above the speed limit, which
Yeah,
we
which
already
gets
have
into,
laws
that's why I'm
for.
curious about speed abatement, but
Talking
yeah,
on the
I'll stop for now. It's just like, I just have a lot of, I think for me, with the sidewalk piece, it just feels really broad, and I'm not sure what evidence really informs that part, where I can really clearly see and understand the median safety issue, and I feel that the sidewalk one, especially given the variability and just how much of the city sidewalk it applies to, I'm not, it's just harder for me to see what that achieves.
Hey, Counselor, can I follow up?
Yeah, I have
real-
Counselor Bush, then Dutton.
Well, yeah, real quick. This is not related, but it's kind of related. We're back to the
Yeah.
traffic issue, right? So I'm dealing with, I know we're sharing this PSO
Oh, the
issue.
transmit, yeah.
What I've learned is I've sat in PSO meetings, because we have the narrow roads and our narrow sidewalks, and you got the poles
Mhm.
in the middle, when they get ready to do the big transformer, there's not enough, this 36 inches, 18 inches, so it's, we have a big debate going on with PSO, because if we're gonna try to comply to this, it needs to get the poles out of the right-of-way as well. And
They have to
in
get
that,
licenses with the people's properties.
well, oh yeah, don't even get me
Yeah, I
started,
know.
that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But what's been interesting is how many of the PSO poles have been hit by cars. It's fascinating if you start looking at our dented poles, and it's like, okay,
We just gotta get those up to 18 inches.
lots of obstruction in our sidewalks, so
Yeah.
it's.
They're not in the curbs,
No,
so
but
they.
that's why I'm just thinking through,
generally
like,
are.
I've seen a lot more physical structures be hit than, like, again, the pedestrian
Well.
statistics are all intersection based from what I, like, or largely intersection based from the, anyway.
Yeah, and we're
Yeah.
extrapolating to say that if
Yeah.
the PSO pole were a person standing, then.
It should have been walking, that was the issue.
Could have been better, yeah.
People made a mistake.
Exactly.
You know, if they
Put a
hurry,
load
we
of
wouldn't have this
baton on the
conversation.
Is that what you were in the queue for, Counselor?
Yeah, you may.
Oh, take me out.
Okay, Counselor Dutton, then I'm gonna say something else.
Okay, yeah, I'm concerned that we are completely overlooking the responsibility of drivers as well. I agree that the safety is an issue. 18 inches is not very wide, but we just heard, Counselor Bush talking about the speeding through Brookside, and I understand that. On my street, their average speed is 40, and it's a 25 mile per hour. And so I see in the process as well that there are a lot of violations occurring with drivers. The people talking on their phones, we have ordinances for citing people talking on their phones while they're driving.
I think it's texting,
It's distracted driving.
Distracted, yeah. So,
There's another word for it.
thank you for that clarification, but yeah, so, there's all of these factors as well, and I just feel that that this is really coming at a specific population, and I'm concerned for that aspect of it. I do know that there was a female hit that was protesting just this weekend. Last weekend, she was hit, but she was intentionally hit by a car that actually went up onto the sidewalk. So, we have these barriers, these widths, these measurements and whatnot, and I still feel the drivers are inattentive. And that we all have to take responsibility, I agree with the safety aspect, but I cannot get on board with the fines, I just can't.
What is, do you want me to ask? I'll just get mine.
Thank you. I might answer some of the questions that you were having. So, I'm glad that we all agree that public safety is our job, and I think I'm not hearing anyone here say like, no, we don't need to do something. I would be remiss if I just acted like it's not anti-panhandling. You said yourself, people in your district step out for money, and I think the public sees this as an anti-panhandling, no matter the intent of keeping people safe, and we know we have Fill the Boot. I don't know if anyone talked to the firefighters about what this would do.
They're for it. They're not opposing this.
Okay. Was that before it was out to the public or as it was being drafted?
I don't know, you asked a question, I got a text this morning, they're good to
Okay.
go.
So that
So
was my
whatever.
question, like who was consulted? Because we have BPAC, we have obviously TPD at the table, but we also have the Away Home for Tulsa Partners who, the population that, Counselor Dutton has surfaced is definitely going to be more readily impacted than, the one cheerleading team that twice a year is doing a fundraiser, not to say that they won't. And then I am concerned about the municipal court impact. We have great compassionate judges, but their dockets are full. They've repeatedly asked for staffing, they've repeatedly asked for support, and so if the intention is to connect people to services by not doing a citation or doing a book to court, that then they're before and get connected to services, I have concerns about impacts, and I'm more cognizant of that because we did do the right-of-way obstruction ordinance and we did do the trespassing revisions in the last little bit as part of the Away Home, or the Path to Home policy work. So I do worry about impacts on the municipal court. I think that, I have 71st and South Memorial, 61st and South Memorial. So we definitely have people invest out there. I would go so far to say that I would personally like to see no medians for pedestrians. They're not built for pedestrians in this town. I I mean, they're just not. I think the language about a reasonable amount of time to cross the street could stay in, but this whole, I got very confused about if you're in more than 10 feet, you don't even have to have a vest and no time, place, and manner. Like, think about Memorial, from like 81st down to 61st, what that could look like. So for me, I would just say, is it reasonable to say medians are only for being maintained, tree canopy, whatever? A lot of it is road diet and or trying to keep traffic from crashing into each other, passing each other. But I would just like to see no people hanging out on any medians of any width. So that's my first thing. The second thing is I would like to see us not do regulations on sidewalks. We've already done that with the right-of-way obstruction ordinance. There's already plenty of regulations happening on the sidewalks that we happen to have in the city. We could continue to acknowledge that the sidewalks that we do have aren't always built for safety. I think that's kind of what we were hearing about the 18 inches. I know the new sidewalks going in get that little buffer zone or something, but the sidewalks on East 71st Street are not, I don't think people use them as much as they could because they're just not safe. And this idea of like if I'm standing in 18 inches or walking in 18 inches, it increases the safety. I think we make a commitment to do a better job with building sidewalks as we go and revising sidewalks, but also just the nuances of and the discretion that can be applied on who's standing on 18 inches, who's at 24 inches, given the right to assemble, questions that have come to the court for, I think a lot of these panhandling ordinances end up in court because of these kinds of things. So I would just say, could we not regulate the sidewalks, regulate the medians? And then on the fines thing, I appreciate you bringing up that, the current one, or the one from 2017, was set at 150, and I think, I want to thank Sarah and Jack, because we got this on Friday, and we had a very short amount of time to do the data dive and everything. And I would just say if I had been on a working group for this revision, these are things that I would have brought to the table, so we could have made more deliberative decisions than we can do in a committee meeting. So she gave me the fee schedule, which I appreciate, and there must have been a time, and tell me when that was, where everything was just auto set at 150.
There were a lot of not all of them, but a lot of those like simple speeding, stop sign, all of those, they were 150. And then when we did there was kind of a mostly across the board increase, probably in 2018, 19, when we did the technology fee. This one did not change though, so I think you see that one stay at 150, whereas a lot of the ones that used to be 150 are now 185.
Right.
Because of
the technology.
But also since that time, we did a $7 million investment in refining fines and fees, because we know that more than 40% of arrests are failure to pay and failure to appear. So that was one of my questions, like how is this policy aligning to that commitment that we made, right? And we know that it's gonna disproportionately impact certain populations. Like, I don't think a youth group trying to fundraise is gonna get cited. I think the person that we always see at XYZ corner, because they have no other place to be, and they're not using a better way, are gonna be the ones that get the citations or booked to court. So that's just the reality of the policy, even though if the intention is not to do that. So that's what raises for me, and I do appreciate that it's been 150, so it is 150. I did get the fee schedule from Sarah on other things, and when we talk about regulating vehicles and bicycles, the fees are like $35 or $50. So the one that jumped out, this page jumped out at me, that I highlighted, sorry, it's multiple pages, and I guess Sarah can give it to you all, but, even if you park on a sidewalk, the citation is like very nominal. It's in here somewhere, but and also bicycles not being on the right.
Parking's under chapter 5, if that's what you're.
Oh, yeah, they're not numbered, but I highlighted it. It was just.
I've
so
got a few that I could pull out too.
When we talk about fines and fees, whether we do it today in this ordinance, I do think we need to revisit and make sure we're using that equity lens that we committed to doing when we realized what an impact it does. Yeah, so parking on the grass, $50. there's some things you can do with, you can park between the sidewalk and the curb and it's $75, but you can't stand between the sidewalk and the curb, or it's gonna be $150 potentially. So I just, when you look at it comprehensively, I think there is a bigger discussion about what the fine could be or should be relative to some of the other stuff that we have. But my main thing is with Counselor Ballas's too, is just, I think we've done some updated regulations on sidewalks for all the reasons we've talked about before, about ADA accessibility, but also they are citywide ordinances, and for us to try to act like that's not what was happening, I think is very disingenuous. We're trying to keep people safe here. It disproportionately affect people who are panhandling for whatever reason they're doing it. I think that examples of leafleting and all of that does happen, but that's not what people are calling us about every day. And the more than 10-foot widths are more in my district and probably more South Tulsa. I don't want someone in a 12-foot wearing no vest and out there at midnight. Like, I don't want that. So, and it sounds like that could be. So I'm just saying, would it be reasonable to say you cannot be in the median for, except reasonably necessary to cross the roadway safely or to maintain it or whatever? And if no, why? We see Jack with his finger up.
Yeah, and I know we've talked quite a bit about the case out of Oklahoma City. When Oklahoma City did that, they said prohibited stopping or standing on all medians for any purpose on roads over a certain speed. The 10th Circuit Court of Appeals struck that down and said that was too broad. It was not narrowly tailored to address the specific public safety issue that Oklahoma City needed to articulate. And actually, the 18 inches comes out of that case, so in a couple of respects. One, the plaintiffs in that case were making that argument that it's not narrowly tailored to address the problem, and the plaintiffs themselves suggested requiring pedestrians to stand more than 18 inches back from the curb. And then a concurring opinion, a judge in that case said that he would have been deferential to Oklahoma City if they had narrowly framed an ordinance like that to say, and for example, the traffic engineer in that case testified that 18 inches from a roadway provides a safety zone, and that city benches may be placed as close to the curb as 18 inches. But the concurring judge said, so if they had narrowly framed their ordinance in that way, it would have been upheld, in his opinion. So that's kind of where that framework.
So how do we get to 10-foot versus 12-foot? Because in Evans versus Sandy City, they were at 3 feet, 36
Right.
inches.
Well, again, we're not, this
It's the 18
ordinance
plus 18.
would not prohibit standing in a median that's under 10 feet wide. It would impose those, again, time, place, and manner restrictions, the regulations.
The
for
vest
safety.
and the
Right.
time of day, but
So-
then over 10 feet,
Right, and it's
you can be there.
a compromise, and it's intended to frame it as narrowly as possible to achieve the public safety objective.
Okay.
Because if you just apply it across the board, that's when courts will strike it down and say
Okay.
it's too broad.
So do we know how many medians in the city are wider than 10 feet and where they're located?
I don't have.
In
any-
my head, I do, but I can't articulate all those right now.
Go on the map.
So one of the things I appreciate in the 5 days we had to look at this was that we were able to get a map. I'm hearing a lot of anecdotes, which, you know, we all have those like very personal experiences ourselves or with constituents, but I would love some data. BPAC has data, they have blue maps. Concerningly, in visiting with them, I was told that for the last 2 years, they cannot get crash data from TPD. I don't know why that is, so I've issued a request today to see if I can get the data. And it could be related to like the hack or whatever, but I know we've done walk audits, we really do rely on the BPAC for their expertise on this, and I would like to better understand, according to the data that we do have, there's only been one fatality that they're aware of that happened on a median, and it was a car hitting another car, and the car that was hit jumped onto the median and got the person, so, you know, and then the sidewalk. I think if people are deliberately driving onto sidewalks, that's obviously a crime, if they're doing it deliberately to intimidate or hit people. And that's my other question. Of the laws that we already have in the books, and Chief Wilmershauser, I appreciate that you're like, the spirit of this is not to do more citations. But what are the things we already have in place that aren't being enforced? The speed limits, these things that we already have the tools for. We all just gave examples of 25-mile-an-hour zones where people are going 40. I feel like there's some tools that we already have in place. So that's the question I've been getting from some people. I candidly have some people are like, it's taken so long, why don't we do this sooner? So I think it's really important that when we talk about these things, we talk about how case law is informing, and other lawsuits and other municipalities that have tried to do the regulations are informing the bumper rails. I've gotten a lot of questions about why the Dayglow vest. Some people think that just calls attention to the people that are needing to wear them because they are asking for money, which is another whole issue, right? We need to get to a place where people don't have to ask for money on the street because they have other resources. So, and then was there any discussion, like Counselor Dutton said, about scaling up a better way so that the alternatives we do have in place are scaled across all these city, places where it's going to impact? Because right now, as I understand it, a better way pretty much is centralized to the downtown core.
But from my perspective, I'm just focused in on trying to get people into a safe place. I just personally do not feel like anybody who's out in the median or in that area of the sidewalk is standing or sitting in a safe place. So I did not explore anything about the diversion programs or the alternative programs that are already out there, but I am happy to work with anybody on that to increase accessibility or increase opportunities there. It just felt like it was something outside of this.
Yeah.
If we had, in the preamble to this, or in the recitals, I just forget the name of it, there are some other accidents that are codified. So there was one at Admiral and Yale where one person was injured and one person was killed. We had the one at 71st and Yale, which you referenced, and then we lost those two contractors at 71st and Elwood as well. So, and then who knows how many more would have been injured had they been those.
Right, those are anecdotes though, and I think we already have laws against driving in a construction zone, and every injury and death is horrible.
Yeah, and we're not going to, because not everybody's going to obey this law, just like they're not obeying the speed limit laws either. But if we can get 10 people or 100 people off of our medians, so they're not exposed to those risks whenever drivers are being inattentive or are not obeying the law, then we've saved a life, or we've saved an injury. And I want to answer your other questions,
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, I understand that. I would feel more comfortable if we have data that's supporting kind of these assertions. I would love to know.
I don't.
I feel like the median situation, I'm understanding from Jack, like we can't be so broad to say all because it was
Yeah.
already determined in Oklahoma City to be illegal. But there are parts of town that have wider than 10 feet. And I have a feeling a lot of them are in my part of town. So again, when we talk about the unintended consequences,
Oh, I
we
see
want
what
to
you're
make sure more people don't go to Brookside and Panhandle. But from 31st Street to 36th Street, it's 25 miles per hour. And they can be there, right? They can be in the Arts District. Because if this passes the way it's written, those other places where people are, the major arterials, that'll no longer be allowed, but they're going to go somewhere. I
And
don't
a lot
think.
of it's business district.
Yeah,
Anecdotally, yes,
Yeah.
they may go somewhere. They may not go anywhere. I mean, we've had this law that was passed in August of 2022 requiring certain things to be done in order to stand out there. And I don't know if I've seen any increases in these areas, downtown, Brookside, Cherry Street. I talked about it with some people who are highly invested in making sure that downtown continues to prosper. And they were not able to articulate whether or not things have increased since you all passed that law in August of 22. I was not at that meeting. That's why I keep saying you all. But it's been in effect, and I just haven't seen anything.
well, I think we should get,
And-
I
and
would
the-
like for us to get feedback from the BPAC on the data that they have. I'd like to get feedback from, the the Away Home for Tulsa Partners, who largely end up having to come alongside these folks to court or whatever, or find the dollars to pay, or whatever it is. I think we just, the feedback that I've gotten since Friday, since this has been put to the public, was a lot of people either don't understand what it will or won't do. So this presentation helps, and I see we have two media outlets here covering it. But I think if this is gonna pass, which we all can decide how, what we're gonna do, what are the other things that are gonna be put in place so that we don't see unintended consequences? Or are we just gonna do this and then wait and see? Because the court thing we already know is a problem right now. And every time we've passed one of these things, it fills the court more, which they're gonna see the number of people they need to see. But when we did the trespass, which I brought forward as a counterpoint to the right-of-way regulation, we have more people in court, and they're just stacked up on those dockets. So, it's like, yes, and I would like to hear from the Mental Health Association about a better way, and are these alternatives? If it's not been in downtown, that's even more of a question I have than why is the van going around downtown? If where we're seeing it is out on 71st and Riverside or Yale or wherever, 41st and Yale or wherever we're actually seeing it, why isn't the van going there to pick up people? And what is the barrier to doing that? Those are the questions I have.
Yeah, and I do want to voice, because I think what I've seen a lot of people is going, hey, yay about the medians, but not always realizing the sidewalk part. And the people that first were kind of surfacing concerns about that to me, aside from some business owners who are worried about the effects on their business from maybe reduced traffic or people not being able to line up on the sidewalk because they were confused, I think, potentially from reading the policy or worried about narrow sidewalks. But a lot of who I heard from with concerns related to the sidewalk component, they were urban design people, multimodal transportation experts, people who work in different, levels of government who are expert in those things, who just were like, hey, when we look at pedestrian safety, those aren't the things this isn't the thing that makes pedestrians more safe. And so that's kind of my angle of knowing that, which again, I do acknowledge, we can't wave a wand and magically put in all these features that make pedestrians more safe. But knowing that the biggest threat to pedestrians is vehicles, I would prefer that we look more at speed abatement strategies than going, hey, you can't stand on this public sidewalk for X amount of time. That's just something that doesn't sit well with me. And from hearing from, again, these transportation and design experts, I was getting a lot of, articles and research and things sent to me that's just not the most optimal way to keep pedestrians safe.
I have Counselor Bangold and Dutton.
Councilor
You put me up.
Oh, and
No, I'll yield.
Okay. Dutton, then
That
Lincoln.
sounds like a
So,
conversation.
I'm concerned about finding alternative solutions for the fine, if that's possible, and that the population that we are predominantly talking about is the panhandler on these narrow medians, and that's, say they get a citation for this, that's probably coupled with jaywalking citations. It could be coupled with setting up an abode citation. So how many citations would then that incur a warrant that then starts to increase the cost that these individuals are looking at? And what is the alternative? Because you cannot expect these people to pay their fines. Even transportation is sometimes a barrier. And so it's gonna cost us a lot more to enforce these ordinances and citations than it would be just to come up with alternative solutions, in my mind.
Oh, Sarah?
Can I just go over kind of the legal standard for fines? So there's a process called a Rule 8 hearing. If you're deemed that you don't have the ability to pay, then your fines are extinguished from this. And so that is a legal process that every person goes through. And an alternative to that is work hours through some of those organizations too that you mentioned. So a better way is kind of as a voluntary program to go into. Our work hour program is a separate program, and we work with a lot of organizations to do work hours. Mm-hmm. And so then the other options, we've invested in doubling special services We have a bus token program to get people to court. We have an embedded social worker within court to connect people to services, and that's just some of that, 6.5 million. So that's, every person's entitled to that Rule 8 hearing. And
But you have to
so
go to court for it, right?
you would have to go to court for that, and there are barriers to go to court, which is why we've invested in all of those other programs. That's why you have such full dockets,
And-
because
and those
people are
both-
showing up to court.
Those bus tokens, are they actually passed out when they get citations? I mean, you know, is
I
this
don't-
like an
I don't-
added benefit? Oh,
Yeah.
we're citing you, but you have to appear in court, and here's this token.
No, I'm not trying to be that that's like an advantageous thing to go to court. I'm
Right.
just trying to explain the legal
Right.
requirements that the judges have to do, but in Oklahoma. So
Okay.
I don't believe the police officers have the tokens, but if somebody is coming back like to special services court, or they are in that situation where they qualify to work with us, that's where we do have those tokens and that ability to get people to court. That we didn't have 6 years ago.
Right,
Thank you.
which is why I was asking the question, like, is this aligned to all that reform work we did? Because I mean, we asked ourselves that question when we did the right-of-way obstruction and the trespass, strengthening the repeated offender penalties, you know, how these impacts will happen, and then we did check back. So, well, if this passes, we will need to do a check back with the municipal court and ask how impacts are happening. Because I do think the problem gets pushed. So if it passes, we'll see less people invest at intersections doing whatever activity, most likely asking for money. So we may see less of it, but that doesn't mean those folks don't have other places that they're going to get money. At the end of the day, they need money or they need resources or something that's driving that. And so this is like one solution, but where does it move folks that the solution isn't a job or a place to stay, or like, right? It's just gonna move it. And I do think we should ask our municipal judges or whoever's tracking, like, why people show up, because I think a lot of people are there, they're panhandling, you know, because they don't have resources, but a lot of them have substance use issues, untreated mental health, and other things that we're trying to address. And to Counselor Dutton's point, like, is there a different alternative way to connect with these folks? So I just want to be very realistic about, yes, we may see less of it, and people may feel safer because they don't have to see it or maneuver around folks, but
Yeah, the ideal, that's where kind of the danger in talking about diversion programs, the ideal isn't a diversion program. The ideal is you get those diversion-based services before
yeah,
you ever enter the criminal justice system.
absolutely.
And so that's why you all fund millions of dollars into those other diversions, and then in case somebody wasn't diverted at that point, then they're still available on the back end. But the greatest hope would be actually less people need to go into special services court because those services are
Right.
over here. But some people enter the path there and some people enter it up here. So, yeah, you as a city, you do those
Yeah,
things.
Counselor Lakin.
Yeah, I appreciate the conversation, and it's important to have this conversation here, I think, so that everybody can hear the conversation that we're having about this. So, on the inattentive drivers, I totally get it. We've had these laws for as long as I've been alive, and, you know, they are effective to a degree, but they're not always going to be perfectly effective. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the issues like the 71st Street and Yale fatality, because someone there ran a red light, and that's why one person died and one person got injured. And those people were happening to stand on the median. Fines, we've talked about fines. You know, I don't know how many people have been cited. We can check the TPD between now and then just to see how many tickets have been issued for somebody not wearing their vest, or somebody starting before sunrise and sundown, just to see, because we've all been okay with a $150 fine since we've been counselors, technically. So when it may not have impacted very many people at all. The people on the medians, have seemed to abide by the law, generally. Not everybody's wearing a yellow vest, but most of the people are wearing a yellow vest, and I'm not really sure how they all figured out that they needed to wear a yellow vest, but the vast majority of the people that I see have conformed to the law. So my hope is that they would conform to this law too, so that TPD didn't have to say to any of those people, hey, you need to move along because this median is only 3 feet and is dangerously unsafe. But if they did run into the person, I still think and believe that the vast majority of them would much rather say, hey, you can't be on the median because it's dangerously unsafe, rather than saying, you turn on the lights, stopping traffic, and getting out and writing that person a citation, believing that that's the best thing to do. You know, I guess there's going to be repeat offenders, and I guess people are going to have to be cited at some point, but hopefully then they can go to the court and then receive some services if they're willing to accept those services. I personally, I mean, I understand what you're saying about the sidewalks, I understand what you're saying about the sidewalks, I just have a different opinion. For me, the median may be more unsafe because you have, in a median situation, you don't have any opportunity for refuge. You know, if somebody is getting ready to run over you, you can jump into the other lane, and then, you know, you may have consequences there. But you typically have 40-mile-an-hour traffic on one side, 40-mile-an-hour traffic on the other side. So you're getting it both ways. With a sidewalk, though, I don't want to say it's half as bad because I want to apply any mathematical equation to it, but at least you do have the opportunity to move. If something is coming toward you, you generally have the opportunity to run a different direction and not run into traffic. But I still believe that the 18-inch standard, if we're applying it to one place that a pedestrian could sit or stay and be hit by a car, I feel like it's important to apply it to another place where a pedestrian could sit or stand and get hit by a car.
But that then feels true for a whole sidewalk really easily too.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm confused, is the
Yeah.
18 inches for highway engineering?
Yes.
No.
No, that's a standard that city engineering uses today to move things away from our residential roads.
Yeah, and it was even part of that Oklahoma City case where
Yeah.
the city engineer for Oklahoma City said they set things back
18 inches.
18 inches.
But
So it
they-
wasn't an arbitrary number that we
Does
came
it-
up with.
Does it come originally from that in OKC or from the ASHTO high, where's that come, where's the 18? From
Well,
both?
I mean, I think municipalities often incorporate those standards into their own design guidelines.
Okay.
The 18-inch horizontal clearance standard, and I think that's common.
For
That's what we're
pedestrian
trying to do,
policy
is
or
just-
for physical objects?
Physical objects, and I think imputing from that, if there's a higher potential for a car to hit a signpost or a utility post or a tree, that there's a higher potential for a car to hit a pedestrian who's,
Are there other places that have that applied to pedestrians?
well, again, that standard is applied for design,
Right.
not necessarily for regulatory purposes. That we're incorporating the safety element of that, the consideration that went into that.
Into the regulatory. Are there other cities that you all know of where they have done this to sidewalks?
Put that buffer on.
Well, another 10th Circuit case
City.
where the court upheld the regulation was in Sandy City, Utah.
Was that for medians and sidewalks?
No, it was just medians, but that was the standard, was a
That's the
36
36
inch
inch.
Right.
median, and so that width was considered significant. That it was narrowly tailored, time, place, and manner restriction, 36 inch
Right.
width. So 18 inches on either side, I suppose was the.
So we don't know if there's sidewalk precedent somewhere though? Because I hear median precedent, but not sidewalk.
I don't know, we can.
That'd be worth finding out maybe if we put this back on committee.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
like to put
and
it.
the only other point that I had was, you know, I heard you say parking between the grass and the sidewalk is X fine and things. I would just say that the level of safety issues in that fine compared to the level of safety issues here are different. And so I I'm fine with the $150 preset fine, given that it has the book to court element and given that it does have the opportunity for a judge to move it up or down, that the Rule 8 hearings are a possibility because of all the work we've already put in through our fines and fees group. But if there is anything else that comes up, then I would think we would look toward the pedestrian section of the code rather than the automobile
Oh,
section.
yeah, I have it all right here, but
Yeah.
the fact that it wasn't looked at before we had this conversation or even last time.
But it was, I mean, I've got them written down right here on one piece of paper, I got the 3.
Yeah, but I was in the, so Counselor Gilbert, 2017, 2022 is me, you, Q, and Patrick. So, and now that we're hearing this, I think we could revisit this whole fine fee. We've talked about equity lens, knowing now about the court reforms and what it does to folks. And, you know, I'm not saying specific to this ordinance, I'm saying let's go ahead and look at all of it because it does
Okay.
not make sense when you start looking at some of these things. There's no rhyme or reason really, when you look at them as a whole. The last thing I'll say, because we're on time, coming up on time, is we have a group of citizens who have dedicated their time, not just the urban planning professionals, but we have people that go out every time there's a pedestrian auto accident, like survey what happened and stuff outside of the police department. And the majority, the Urban Data Pioneers did a study where 52% of crashes involving people walking were in signalized intersections, to Counselor Bellis's point. A lot of these major arterials, right? So there's other ways that we can keep people safe, and I'm not saying it's one or the other, but for the amount of energy and community dialogue that's been spurred by this ordinance, I would like for us to consider other things like a reduction in speeds. Owasso reduced theirs to 35 miles per hour, so we could look and see what the outcomes of that have been, where it makes sense. Obviously, they're a smaller community, but still. We could look at regulating right-hand turns on red lights, where, you know, if the data shows that's how people are being hit, we should look at that. People turning in the shoulder, that's not even a turn lane. That is a constant fight in my community where there's shoulders are painted, people think they're right turn protected.
Yeah.
I'll just scooch past all the queue, right? And then that's where people can get hit, and that's people on bikes or walking. So when we're talking about regulations to protect people, I do think this is an overemphasis on people on foot, and we're not doing a counterbalance yet to people in cars or even on bikes or motorcycles. So I would hope as we continue to have conversations about how do we keep people safer in the community, we look at these other policies, just on, you know, red light situations and turning, and finding a way to do more traffic enforcement. The number one request in my community for policing is traffic enforcement. It's not other things, and I recognize like our part of town may have more crimes of opportunity or more retail crimes, but the number one thing that I hear from people is please get someone out here to just enforce traffic in neighborhoods and on the major arterials, which would also take down the number of other incidents that are happening. So that's something we have to resource our police department with.
So,
Councilor Beck?
yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing, that it's way too easy to focus on that small population of people that are panhandling in these medians than it is to focus on the violations, the traffic violations as well. I mean, that's a small population compared to the number of people committing traffic violations on a daily. And so that's my concern as well, is that they're so visible. And it's easy to profile that visibility. And so,
I just want to say
the
that's
safety is a big issue for me too. It really
Yeah,
is.
that's-
It's concerning to me as well, but,
my wholesale focus.
right. But the visibility of those that are actually in the median is predominantly panhandlers, and so.
Okay. So-
Counselor,
yes.
can I add one
Yeah,
comment?
sure.
There's another part of this that hasn't even been spoken about, and I was waiting for that to be brought up.
Out of all the things we talked
There's a victimization component to this. Not only the individual that gets hit, but the inadvertent driver who hits that person. This 18 inches, just like Counselor Lakin was talking about, you have some of these vehicles that are driving down neighborhood streets, big trucks with big mirrors. And if you're walking down the sidewalk, we see all the time on YouTube, TikTok, pick your platform, where trucks underestimate or overestimate their equipment and end up hitting objects that are sitting still. I understand the scenario, some of the scenarios you were talking about, like fighting with your toddler to get in the car. Those are totally different. This is about, I don't understand the attempt to transfer inherent risk to the driver. To me, as adults, if our child, and I look at it from this scenario, if my child got close to 18 inches to that road, what would I be doing as an adult? I'd be screaming at him to get back from the road, right? How do we think that that's safe for anybody else? And I just don't understand that thought process. So to me, there's a lot of different things to consider about this. I don't see it as targeting. I would not want anybody, I don't care if they're doing a car wash drive, I don't care what it is. This thinking it's okay to allow people to stand that close to traffic.
No, I don't think any of us
Cops
said
can't
that.
be everywhere.
I
I
get
totally
that.
understand this.
But I don't think any of
It's
us
all
said
over the
that
city.
we weren't concerned about the safety, and we are concerned about the
Yeah,
safety.
and that's why I said, I don't understand the argument of 18 inches on a sidewalk versus a median. They're both dangerous, and walking that close to traffic, regardless of whether it's 25 miles an hour. And
Well, it's dangerous all
Chief
through.
Wilmerhauser can attest to this. Even if you're riding a motorcycle and you're not wearing a helmet, 25 miles an hour can kill you. So think about a car driving 25 miles an hour and hitting a person.
I'm just thinking about why
There's
don't
still
cities,
an impact here.
my one thought is though, then why don't cities, if this is the case, why don't cities everywhere? I'm thinking about when you're in, like, at a train station or like a subway in a city, where when the train's coming, there's always that big giant yellow stripe that's like, don't stand here, train's coming through. If this is the case, why don't cities all over the country have that painted on every sidewalk? It just seems like it's not a standard sidewalk.
That's
thing.
becoming,
But we don't all have sidewalks.
it is becoming the standard. You see the brick and the grass
Right.
divider approximately this width, and that's because those design guidelines have been incorporated locally.
But
I
that's
don't
the
wanna
design
keep-
guidelines, not people
I don't
standing
want it,
guidelines.
I don't want this to be
Yeah.
But the design guidelines
an
are,
issue
Yeah.
where
we don't want people in that space.
the police aren't able to sit here and use
Yeah.
the common sense discretion of what some of the scenarios you're talking about. But the issue for me is, as human beings, we should know better than to be that close
Oh,
to
sure.
moving traffic.
That's personal
And so I don't
responsibility.
understand the argument, trying to argue safety regardless of who's doing it. Because I wouldn't want anybody hit.
Of course.
So if that was somebody I knew, or if it was one of our children that was out there doing some sort of thing and they were hit, yeah, we'd have a problem with it. And
So-
I don't want to put that on somebody else's conscience.
I have a question. If this passes, then fill the boot activities as we know them cease to happen unless it's wider than 10-foot medians?
Well, currently, you can't go in the roadway.
Correct.
To do that.
For anyone.
Anyways,
Yeah.
so, that's currently against the law. So,
No, a lot of them stand on the medians.
Yeah,
yeah.
when we passed this last time, they were still doing it.
I mean, they've lobbied the state and all that, so I understand what Counselor Bush said, like, the local is not gonna come out against it, but I'm just asking, like, part of why Counselor Patrick brought it back is when the state statute changed to allow that
I
activity.
don't think they could do it in all places in its current form, but I do think there are public spaces that they could do that activity in.
All right, I'm sure after today's discussion, there'll be lots more emails, calls, and questions, so, I don't know.
Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah,
It was
thank
helpful.
you, everyone's
Yeah.
robust, yeah, I really appreciate it.
I don't know if it'll need to come back on committee to circle back to all these folks that are just catching up to what we're doing here. Yes, Counselor?
We talked a little bit about it, but my concern is the right to assemble. And oftentimes, when you decide if you want to assemble in protest, it's based on the location, not just I'm not gonna protest something that's going on in my community, downtown.
Where I have the sidewalks to do it.
Right, so that's a concern for me, and I'm just wondering, how will this ordinance, or even if it can be modified to address those concerns. That's a thing,
Well,
and,
sure, and I
I think laws are being passed just really nationally to quiet voices, and that's a concern for me.
Well, I think
And that's a constitutional
Oh, right.
liberty.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Sure.
want to impede on that at all.
Well,
Again-
I mean, it could, but depending on where the sidewalk, where they're.
Yeah, but I don't want
'cause
you
I've
hit
protested
'cause you're
on sidewalks.
protesting.
I agree. I don't want to get hit.
That's what I'm saying.
But I also want to be able to protest when I feel there's a need
Yeah,
to protest.
I agree.
So this ordinance would apply regardless of the content of the speech, so for any purpose, for any form of expression. So it would apply to protests or political campaigning or any form of expression. So that's important consideration. And
When you
again,
say it will apply, meaning it will be illegal.
well,
Just in those
if
18
someone,
inches.
if people are standing within 18 inches of the roadway. So
Okay.
again, that's the consideration, the time, place, and manner. The activity either needs to be pushed back 18 inches or moved laterally to an area that's wide enough to accommodate it. Or if it's on a median, a median larger than, say, 36 inches, or with those safety measures in place, or if it's a wider than 10-foot median, then the protest would be fine without those regulations.
So long as they're 18 inches from each of the curbs on the median.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
if it's curbed.
but the key point is, this would apply regardless of the form of expression.
So if there's a
And just the
protest
numbers.
on a sidewalk in town that's been engineered to the design standards we're talking about with the buffer, they're automatically 18 inches off, but I think what I'm hearing here is
Yeah,
we
just
know
don't
that
stand on
all
the bricks.
sidewalks aren't engineered that way, so in the older parts of towns where they weren't engineered that way, it limits speed.
We looked at this a lot when we did the I actually think this probably applies more in the obstructing ordinance that you already addressed, and looked at that a lot in a lot of literature on that, and so you can have the speech activity, whatever it is, a protest, on a sidewalk, but you still do need to allow for clear path. So there should already be a clear path for people to at least pass, a person with there. So I actually think it comes up a little bit more in the obstructing sidewalk ordinance maybe than it does in this one.
But all
I'll
the
say
sidewalks
that-
across the town, across the city are not equal.
They're not, and
No.
that was the point I was
No, I'm
making,
not.
because when
I'm
we
not.
protested, we would have to be very careful, not only obstruction, but staying away from the street, but if you go too far back, trying to observe that 18 inches, then you're on a property. Well, if you're protesting that property, they're gonna tell you to get off their property.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is limited.
Chief, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the concern of First Amendment rights is the constitutional right of all of us, and I completely understand your concern, Counselor. And it's TPD's mission to work to make sure that everybody maintains their right to assemble, to protest whenever need be. And we actually work with a lot of protest organizers and protesters that we don't work with, that when minor ordinances are violated during the course of a protest, strict enforcement doesn't all of a sudden just occur. We work to just educate people of, hey, didn't know if you know, this is the ordinance, keep doing what you're doing, we're here to protect you and make sure that you're safe, but here's the education piece of that, and then to back off and allow for that. So I do want you to know that we're gonna continue to make sure everybody remains safe and is able to exercise their First Amendment right, so.
Okay, I think we have to adjourn this meeting. Do you need when do you wanna come back, since it's 4:15?
10 minutes.
10
No, we don't
minutes?
have, 8 is off.
8, yeah, I was pulled, sorry.
No, that's good. No, that's
Postpone.
great. I was worried because nobody was here.
No, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, let's 4:25. Is that
Yeah,
good for you?
we're
Lauren?
adjourned. Thank you.